I'm Carey Stinson, and my journey through life has been quite an adventure. For over 20 years, I played Barney the Dinosaur on tour and 7 seasons of the hugely popular TV show Barney and Friends. Now my journey is to bring together friends and guests from all over the entertainment world for inspiring and at times amusing behind-the-scenes conversation. I'm Carey Stinson, and this is Purple Roads. Welcome to Purple Roads. I'm Carey Stinson, and we're going to have so much fun this week. We have Buster Balloon. We're going to talk all about balloons and Halloween and all the different things he's doing. Buster, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you today?
I am so great, and this is going to be so much fun. I have seen your work. It's absolutely amazing, and I love what you're doing with Halloween. We're doing a month of Halloween shows, and I'm just so excited to have you on. Yeah, we're going to talk all about it, but I got to talk from the beginning here. So Buster Balloon is actually your official name, your real name, your legal name.
Yes, I legally changed my name to Buster Balloon 9 years ago because when I commit to a gag, I commit to a gag.
I love it. I love the dedication.
But also, and I don't get to tell the story very often, but we're talking like behind the scenes stuff here.
Yes.
And years ago, I don't know if this is true or not, but the urban legend was that Paul Reubens was extra cautious, that when he went out in public, he never looked anything like Pee-wee, because he never wanted kids to associate the regular real world him with Pee-wee. And all the credits on the TV show and everything, it never lists, it never says Paul Reubens as Pee-wee Herman. It's always Pee-wee Herman as himself. Right. Paul Reubens might get a credit as a producer, but it's never a connection. And I realized that kids would ask what's my real name. Right. And I didn't want to ruin that illusion because I don't wear a costume. I'm just me when I perform. Sure. And so I live as Buster Balloon, and I changed my name to Buster Balloon. And one of my favorite things is when a kid asks what my real name is being able to pull out my driver's license or my passport and show them that my name really is Buster Balloon. And just the look on their face when they see that is great.
It's really interesting that you say all that, because I learned when I got into children's entertainment that there's a responsibility to it. Right, what you're talking about, there's a responsibility to it. It's very different than others, because you're dealing with kids who are so authentic and so trusting, and you really have to earn their trust, and you have to understand that. And I just think that's so interesting that you would do that, and I understand it.
Yeah, and like even, we all have good and bad days, right. But there'll be days where I'm at the grocery store or I'm out running errands, and the second I hear a kid voice say Buster, no matter what kind of day I'm having, like I immediately lighten up, and it's dual-sided. It's one that I know there's a kid that just recognized me and I've got to put on my game face, but it's also, I'm so excited that a kid just recognized me that I automatically light up and like immediately go into like that performer mode. Because I want to meet a kid who met me at a library or a school or some other fun event they were at.
That's fascinating as well, because I always said that with Barney, well, when I was playing the character, you're on. Barney can't be sad. Barney can't. You've got to be on. So Carey disappears, and whatever's going on in my life is gone for that moment. But with you being recognized and being out there, it's got to be a challenge at times, because we all have tough days, as you were saying. That's got to be a challenge at times.
There's definitely moments, and there's days where you just you don't want to go out there and do it, but yeah, kids are so much fun, and just the energy that kids bring, like no matter what kind of day I'm having, once I'm on stage, I'm interacting with the kids, it all melts away. Nothing else matters at that moment. And that's the one cool thing about it too, is that it's, like I said, when a kid says my name and I realize I've been recognized by them out somewhere, it's not that I'm putting on a show. It really is just, it brightens my day. I immediately change modes. No matter what kind of day I'm having, I'm immediately excited to meet a kid who thinks that I'm some kind of a celebrity worth recognizing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm curious, how did you get, because, and we're going to talk about this more as we go through this, but you're not just blowing up balloons. There is such a skill to what you do. It's really amazing. So where did this all start? How did you get into
When
blowing
I
up
was
balloons?
when I was about 3 years old, I became really obsessed with art. I mean, every kid's an artist, but I really, really like every scrap of paper I could get my hands on was a canvas. And so I was drawing and sculpting when I was 3. And when I was 5, I saw my first magicians on TV and was completely hooked and totally fell in love with magic. And so I kind of went back and forth between art and magic all the time I was growing up. And then when I was about 18, I discovered balloon twisting. And that was like the perfect mash because it was my artistic side and my performer side coming together. And it took a long time. You know, it took a good 10 years of, from the spark of balloons maybe being something more than just a static sculpture to being
Right.
performance, to where it was actually a full stage show that I'm doing, you know, in theaters and at schools and libraries all over the country and all over the world. But you know, that evolution started there when I was 18 and first picked up those balloons and started playing.
Now, how did you put together your act? Because I think that's what's really important. You have a certain way that you dress, you know, to entertain a crowd and to keep them entertained is got to be a challenge with what you're doing. But you found this really interesting, the way from the way you dress to the way you blow the balloons up and all the aspects that you do. How long did it take you to create this act?
Um, Gosh, I'm going to be 50 in about a month here. So I'll get back to you when I know. So, it's a lifelong evolution. And I've done classes and lectures for the performers, and I've done classes on developing a character. And really the biggest thing I try to teach them is that it has taken me years and years and years to unlearn all the things I tried to learn about being a character. Because I spent like the first 20 years of my career trying to make up a character that I thought audiences would like. And when I stripped away all the character and just started really being myself on stage, everything changed because I wasn't hiding behind a character anymore. And it actually bothered me for a while because I couldn't understand why it was that other performers could put on an act and connect with an audience and I couldn't. And then I actually started meeting people. Like I actually got to meet Paul Rubens at a party one time. And I met stand-up comics and other performers who I really admire and realized that they're not characters. Like that the person you see them on stage as is genuinely them. That's a real part of their core being. And they might exaggerate parts of it, but it's always really them. And that was a huge revelation for me, that realizing that the more I was myself on stage, the more the audience connected. And once I got comfortable on stage, the more I dug deeper, and like little things like being clumsy, you know, things that I would normally want to cover up as a stage performer, the more I embrace those things and just lean into them, the more the audience feels a connection because they see that in themselves.
It's really interesting. I'm curious on that whole line, on that vein. Okay, so you see that you need to go in this new direction. How long does it take you to actually let go and allow yourself? I mean, are you a perfectionist, or were you allowed yourself to stumble and do all the things that got you to where you are now?
I think being a perfectionist held me back for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I started, you know, I realized that the performance aspect, especially comedy, I felt comedy was the place where I was lacking the most. I had the artistic chops as a balloon sculptor, I had the magic chops, I had the stage presence, but I didn't have the comedy chops that I wanted to really take the show where I wanted to. So I really got heavy into studying comedy for a few years. And especially improv classes were the big thing, because in improv, it's all about working with your team, and it's always yes and. You know, if another performer says something, you don't say no to it, you don't block them. Whatever gets thrown into a scene, no matter how ridiculous or even accidental, you've got to take it and run with it. And so even though I'm a solo performer, the kids are always on stage. There's always at least 1 or 2 kids on stage with me who I'm interacting with. And I realize they are my improv partners. And if I'm going to say no and I'm going to block them, that's throwing off the show. But if I'm able to let go, stop being that perfectionist, and just let go and I can have a script, an idea going in, but if the kids decide to take it in a different direction and possibly a better one, I just got to roll with it. And everything became so much easier. It's so much more relaxed when I don't worry about, trying to keep my script on track when you've got a 3-year-old on stage, because that's just not going to happen.
Right. But, isn't that funny that it's easier when you let go? Because I understand what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Oh, and it seems so counterintuitive at first. The idea of not trying to be a perfect version of yourself and just being your flawed self, and letting the accidents and mistakes happen and just rolling with them. And I've seen other performers. I've got friends who some of the best shows I've ever seen them do were the ones where everything went wrong. And they were good enough performers to lean into it and embrace it and turn it into just comedy gold, where you wish you could make that happen every show.
Isn't that funny? Well, and you've got to, don't you find that each show's individual, right? And
yeah, absolutely.
You're never going to have it can't be the best every time. It's just not absolutely possible. Are you able to just let it go for what it is?
Yeah, and I think, with improv, audiences understand that it's not a script. And so they're actually looking for the flaws.
Sure.
They don't want to see you fail, but they want to see you get into trouble, and they want to see how you get out of the trouble. And so, if I'm doing my script and things go off the rails and it becomes obvious that it's gone off script and I'm not dealing with it well, that's a bad show. Right. But if I get a really energetic 3-year-old with their own agenda on stage with me, and they start going off in whatever direction, and I'm able to follow that and still keep some semblance of control, parents are mesmerized by that. At that point, it's not even the entertainment factor. It's the fact that I could deal with their child in a situation that would have frustrated them.
Right.
And they're just amazed, like, oh my gosh, you're so good with the kids. How do you keep their attention? This is what I do.
Right.
Of course, I have the luxury of doing it in very small bursts.
Right. Right, but what do you do when you see maybe you're losing them a little bit? They're not liking something you're doing, or they,
right.
Especially I've got to think with these balloons, trying to impress kids all the time. There's got to be a challenge for you at times.
I think. Well, with the balloons are.
I mean, do they go, "Hey, I've seen that," or you know what I'm saying? Because, we'll talk about it here in a minute, but I saw the Kelly Clarkson, and you did an octopus. I didn't see that coming at all. So it really kept me, what is he going to do? What is he going to do? What is he going to do? And then the payoff was there. Is there a challenge for that part of it?
Balloons are just intrinsically fascinating. There are certain things that, like, scientists have studied that human beings are fascinated by. Fireworks, smoke, lightning, just things that we're completely enraptured by and we can't look away from. And balloons are one of those things. Once I start twisting balloons, it's amazing how people get drawn into that. And if it's just a balloon sculpture being made, and it's, an elaborate balloon sculpture is going to take like 20 minutes in front of a live audience, that can start to drag. But then mixing in the comedy and the magic, and maybe having some pre-made pieces to speed it up a little bit, that turns it into a more theatrical piece that holds on to the audience. And also it goes back to the whole just being yourself and being in the moment. And, if you really feel that you're losing them, just admit it.
Right.
Right. Literally just stop the show and be like, you know what? This kind of sucks. Let's do this instead. And just move on.
Have you done that? Or a version of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What is the challenge? Because you're working with something, when you're working with balloons, that could pop, or they couldn't go the direction you want them. Is that a big challenge for you, working with something that isn't going to be perfect? It could do different things while you're on stage.
Right. Well, the balloons are all super rehearsed before they ever go out in front of the public. So a balloon sculpture is, I literally, there's a part of my show where I twist a balloon blindfolded. And that came from me doing events where I was talking to a kid, and one day it just dawned on me that I was twisting the balloon while I talked to somebody and I wasn't looking at my hands anymore because I'd made the sculptures so many times. It was just muscle memory. And so, yeah, the sculptures are at that point before they go on stage. And then, you know, much like children themselves, the balloons can be temperamental and have their own ideas of what's going to happen. So there's always backup balloons. You know, if there's a pre-made piece, there are two of that pre-made piece in case one decides to deflate or pop. I've got a backup I can grab immediately. Or if it's something that I'm twisting live, there's always a backup set of every balloon that I need for that particular sculpture. Because yeah, balloons are actually more temperamental than the kids are. I have more luck controlling the kids than I do the balloons some days. So there's always backup plans and outs.
Let's talk about some of the things you've done with these balloons, because you're not just doing traditional. I mean, you've made dresses.
I have.
Let's talk about where that came from.
Well, that's been around for a while. The first inkling of a balloon dress was probably, it was a couple decades ago at least. And Marvin Hardy, who's considered like the godfather of modern balloon twisting, he traveled all over the world for decades teaching people and spreading this knowledge. He was at a balloon conference and they were going down for the big gala banquet night, and his wife was like, I don't have anything to wear. I've got a top, but I don't have a skirt to go with this. It's like, all right, I'll make you one. And he had said it half joking, but then grabs the balloons, and 20 minutes later, she's got a skirt made out of balloons, and they go down to the party. And that was the first instance we know of somebody starting to make a balloon dress. And now they're all over the world. There are competitions at almost every major balloon conference, with a dress competition and a costume competition, fashion shows. My daughter, Tawny Bubbles, who lives in Las Vegas, a few years ago, she got hired to go to Egypt for like 3 weeks. And she had 2 days off every week. And the other 5 days, she had to make a different balloon dress every day for 3 weeks for an exhibit at a fashion mall. And so this whole crazy thing of, hey, why not twist balloons into an entire dress? And I've had the chance to do a couple of them now, and it's exhausting and it's finger numbing, but it's just incredible because it's one of the ways that we get to take balloons beyond just being something simple for kids, which is how most people see it. And the rare times when we can take balloons into that rarefied air, that strata where it's seen as real legitimate art and not just a glorified party favor, is really cool to me.
I know everyone that was listening to this is going to say, Tony Bubbles. So
Tawny Bubbles.
Tawny, excuse me. But I want to make sure I heard that correctly. So she's in the business as well?
Yes. Yeah, it's great. It's really cool that, you know, and we don't see each other as much as I would like to, because, you know, even though I'm LA and she's Vegas, that it's still hard to make it from one place to the other sometimes. And the fact that we go to these balloon conventions every year, like we joke that sometimes we have to fly like to a mutually exclusive state, like we're right next door to each other, but we'll fly to Chicago to spend a week together at a balloon conference because those are like our annual family reunions.
So I'm fascinated about balloon conferences. What is a balloon conference? And I mean, we're talking
pure
obviously about
chaos and madness. That's what it is. It's pure chaos and madness. I'll say, okay, so there are sort of two sides to the balloon industry.
Okay.
There are the decorators, and they're the ones who do like the big party stuff. You see arches and like the canopies over a wedding dance floor, things like that.
Right.
And then the twisters, people like me who make, you know, fun stuff for people to play with at a party. And so most of the conventions are aimed at one or the other. There aren't a lot of do a big crossover, some, but not much. So the decorator conferences really focus more on those techniques. I can't speak to those as much because I don't go to those.
Sure.
Twister conferences are just a big party. We have classes, and the classes are totally optional, which is good because there's like half the attendees who go to the classes and learn everything in the classes. The other half of the attendees sleep all day and then hang out in the 24-hour jam room, because there's literally a room dedicated to just balloon twisters, swapping ideas and playing and experimenting. And the different balloon manufacturers come in and they stock the room. So anything that you don't have with you, it's in easy reach, and products you haven't played with yet, you can grab those and experiment. And so it's half, teaching convention, and the other half is this wild laboratory of just ideas being exchanged and played with. And then scattered in amongst that are a couple of competitions. There's usually a dress competition / fashion show, and then there's like small, medium, and large sculpture competitions. The small is usually something, about, something smaller than you would even see like a birthday party performer make, maybe, but super, super detailed, all the way up to the large competition, which I've seen someone actually did a half-scale model dinosaur.
Wow.
At a convention, and it was spot on. Like you could pull up the picture from the Natural History Museum, and every single bone was there.
Wow.
And it was perfect and flawless.
Wow. Does that kind of stuff, does that fuel you when you're seeing, are you trying to when you see these other artists doing things, does that inspire you to take your game up another level?
Most of the time. Every once in a while I see something really amazing. I go, man, I'm old. I don't have that kind of energy anymore. But mostly, yeah, I look at this stuff, I'm like, wow, that's just, it's incredible to see how balloon twisting has transformed. Because when I first got into it 30 something years ago, it was, nobody wanted to learn anything that you couldn't make in 2 minutes at a birthday party. And so there were very few people who wanted to take the art beyond where it was,
right,
let alone made the effort. And now there's this insanely talented young crop that comes in. And again, when I first started learning, we didn't have video yet. We had books, and you had to try to decipher somebody's hand-drawn illustrations from this little tiny stapled together pamphlet. And now there's YouTube channels, and there's streaming downloads. And so I'm watching these kids who are like, late teens, early 20s, and they've been able to absorb more knowledge in 2 years of balloon twisting than I got in my first decade. And they're coming up with some insane stuff. And I think that's my favorite thing about doing these conventions, is seeing how far and how fast this current generation of balloon twisters is able to push things, and just trying to keep up with them a little bit. There's no way I'm ever going to catch up with them entirely.
Well, but
I hang on a little bit.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you were saying, first of all, you have the energy. You have got a lot of energy. I can already see that. So I don't want to hear any of that about it, no energy, because you obviously have that. But I love this idea of this room where you can just be creative.
It is.
I love that idea.
And I think more than any other art form I've ever participated in, more than magic or comedy or even in like traditional, visual art forms, I've never known a group that's more into being a community and a family, and the information is very open source. If someone comes up with an actual design of a balloon sculpture, if I design a specific character, most people will go out of their way to acknowledge that that was my design that they copied or they built off of. But when it comes to the techniques, the building blocks that allow you to create things, everyone is so sharing it. It's completely open source. And that's what's allowed the art form to transform so quickly. Because the only thing I can compare it to is electronics and computers. Like how we've made this insane jump, within a couple of decades, from, still having handheld calculators to having this little box in your hand that's your phone and your calculator and your video camera and your communication to the entire world. It's really jumped from that. In just a couple of decades, we've gone from the majority of balloon twisters just making doggies and swords to an event where you've got 350 people all just insanely obsessed with making the coolest stuff that they possibly can.
But it's so beautiful to hear everyone working together and giving credit where it's due, you know, in the creative process, that's really where you get there. And I love the fact of a room where you can fail, because the only way to really be creative and really take your art somewhere is to be able to fail. And so I think so many people are scared to fail, but you can only go so far if you limit yourself. And if you don't try, you're never going to know.
You learn way more from your failures than you do from your successes. You know, you do something right and you don't even know necessarily what you did right. You just know that something worked. When you fail, you know why you failed. You pick that apart and you analyze it and you learn from those mistakes so you don't make them again.
Well, and you almost are happy about it, right? Instead of, oh my God, I failed. It's the opposite. Well, I tried, you know, it didn't work, but boy, was it a spectacular failure. And you, as you just said, you learn from it and you go on. I love that.
Right. And then, you know, back to the performing thing, if I've got a kid on stage and everything goes swell and great, I'm going to keep doing the same thing. I'm not going to change. But if I get a kid on stage and something goes wrong, you know, early on in my performing career, there were 1 or 2 occasions where a kid would be up on stage with me and they're super happy and we're having a great time. And then a second later, I look down and their expression has completely changed and they don't look like they're having fun anymore. Well, after 2 times of a child wetting themselves on stage with me, I learned very quickly when that expression changes, I better ask if they're okay.
Right.
And again, that's something that you don't learn that until you make that mistake of not checking in with that kid and make sure that everything's okay with them and nothing changed in the relationship that you didn't notice, so that they're still having a good time and they're still happy that they're there with you.
All right, we kind of started at the beginning of this show. We were going to talk about Halloween, and I saw how excited you got. And I'm a big Halloween guy, and I know you are too. So let's get all into talking about Halloween and what you're doing with balloons in Halloween.
I am a total Halloween junkie. It has always been my favorite holiday. My parents were horrified when I was a child because I was always obsessed with monsters and creepy things, and now I get to live out all of that. So several years ago, I started creating Halloween design balloons. And really trying to push the envelope, see if I can actually make some like creepy and spooky balloons, go beyond just the traditional cute balloon. And I started posting photos of it, and little by little, I built up this gallery of different creations until I had over 30 of these characters. So now every year at Halloween time, I spend the entire month, every day there's a different spooky balloon of the day. And this year, because people aren't able to get out as much, and I thought we just need to kick off the Halloween season extra early this year and give kids something fun and get them excited to look forward to this. So I decided I was going to do 2 full months. So I'm about 12 sculptures shy right now of what I need for the entire run. But I started September 1st and posting a different spooky balloon every day from September 1st all the way through Halloween. And then also creating video content. For October, I've got a ton of quick, fun, spooky videos I'll be posting on all of my social media, but also working on virtual shows that I can do, because there are a few events like the Anaheim Fall Festival and other Halloween events that I've worked with in the past that can't do live events this year. So creating virtual content for their events, as well as for my private clients, and doing a handful of live shows, as long as the producers can keep everything properly distanced, keep everybody safe. We're doing a few of those, but not a whole lot.
This is so cool because we've all had to adjust, obviously, to what's going on. We talk about a lot on this show, and obviously we're doing this show from our offices, and we're across Zoom, which I love.
Right.
But I love that people aren't letting it get in their way. They're being creative and finding ways. And I just think this is amazing. By the way, we are going to have all the links so that you can see all of this stuff that Buster is doing. We will have all of that to get that out there. All right, so when you're creating these characters, do you just go after the idea and don't even think if it's possible or not with balloons? Or do you think about the balloon part of it when you're creating these characters?
It's sort of both.
Okay.
Once I get the basic idea for a sculpture, I start thinking through the process of what's going to make it happen. And with the great thing about balloons is that it's such a quick medium. I've got a very short attention span. I've got ADD. And so the idea of traditional artistic mediums like painting or sculpting, where I'm going to create a piece of work over days or weeks, I can't handle that. Like, I don't have the patience for it. Whereas balloons, you know, the same thing that would have taken me weeks or months to create out of clay, like a sculpture, I can do that in a matter of minutes with balloons. There's an immediacy to it that I love. The downside is with clay, I can dig into it and I can cut pieces away. I can't cut pieces of balloon away for obvious reasons. So with the balloons, I really have to look at the structure and the aesthetic at the same time. But when I was in high school, I had a really great art teacher named Mrs. Schaefer, and she taught us that everything was a medium. So she taught us the basic building blocks of art. And like, if I'm going to draw or paint something, when I first flesh out the character, because you don't start detailing immediately, you get the building blocks first, and then you detail. So for a person, I would do an oval for the head, usually, okay, cylinder for the neck, block for the body, cylinder, cylinder, square.
Okay.
And then I can go back and detail. Well, with balloons, it's the exact same thing. And that was the click. That was the connecting thing when I realized that balloons were just another medium, and everything that my high school art teacher taught me came flooding back. So, but instead of being geometric shapes, it's balloon shapes and balloon twisting patterns and balloon sizes, and sometimes even the colors that affect it. So now, instead of being oval, cylinder, square, now it's, I know 13 different ways to make a balloon face. Which of those faces is going to best plug into this character? Or maybe there's something that wasn't intended to be a face in the first place, but maybe that particular shape, that particular bubble configuration would actually fit in this situation. And once I figure out how to plug and play these hundreds and hundreds of different bubble combinations and balloon shapes and sizes that float around my head all the time, once I can plug those in, I can pretty quickly make a sculpture. But it's figuring out what goes where first.
Do you sketch them out? Do you talk it to yourself? How do you come up with that part before you actually start working on the balloons?
Usually it's just in my head.
Okay.
Like I can envision the balloon, like the bubbles layering on top of each other, what's going to go where, and then I just grab the balloons and dive in. That's the easiest way. Because I found it's one of those things where the more you think about it, you know, you get to the point where you've thought it through and you think it's perfect, but as soon as you pick up the balloons, everything changes. So once I've got an idea like that and I've got a pretty good idea of how I'm going to do it, I just jump right in. Because again, going back to making mistakes, I want to make all the mistakes early on so I can get past them and figure out the right way to do it. Because I know they're going to be there, so.
Well, yeah, right. Do you finish one and go, it's not right, and start over?
Sometimes, or more likely, because I think I've got a very improvisational approach to balloons, is a lot of times I will start something and it doesn't go the way that I originally wanted it to, but I'll see something different in it. And then I'll run in that new direction that I see.
I want to go to that point a little bit more because I think that's absolutely fascinating. And it happens to all of us. Instead of just completely giving up on an idea. And I think it's brilliant that you just pop the whole thing and get so frustrated.
I think all of my best ideas come from mistakes. They really do.
I love that. All right, so when you're finishing one, do you get frustrated sometimes with the shapes or with the colors? I wish I would use this or that. Or is it both?
All of it. I mean, every artist struggles with that. And yeah, there's a lot of times I'll finish a piece, I'm like, it's not quite what I wanted it to be. And I'll go back and tweak and play with it. And one of the cool things about being a balloon artist is that very often we do recreate the same thing over and over again. You know, they never repainted the Mona Lisa, but I make the same monkey, 30 times in a weekend sometimes, depending on what I'm doing. So.
But do you change it up each time when you're doing like a monkey? Do you change a color or change a shape a little bit to make them all unique?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it depends on what the kid wants. Usually if I'm twisting balloons for a kid, if it's on stage, the sculptures are pre-scripted because they match the performance. If I'm just an event and I'm making stuff for kids, then they get a vote in what I want to do. They pick the colors and shapes and things. But as you make this sculpture over and over again, you start finding better ways. And there have been sculptures where I've made it the exact same way for 10 years. And then one day there's this revelation that there was a way better, way simpler way to do the exact same thing the whole time. And suddenly that changes everything. So yeah, you never know when you're gonna discover something new about a sculpture you thought you knew inside and out.
What is your favorite one that you've done Halloween themed? Okay, what is your favorite?
You can't ask a mother to choose between her children.
I get. But general idea. So let's say your 4 favorite.
4 favorites.
Yes. Not to put you on the spot.
I've done. I wasn't prepared for this line of questioning. I think there, as a balloon artist, there are 2 sculptures for me that I consider like the holy grail. There are 2 things that I've done over and over again, and I'm never happy with, and that's a monkey and Frankenstein.
Wow.
Because monkeys are just funny. Monkeys are always funny, and they're always great. Kids like monkeys. I like monkeys. Monkeys are fantastic. And so I've got a monkey that I've been doing for about 15 years now that everybody loves. And so like, that's my go-to monkey. But the back of my head, there's always the thought that there's a better way. There's a better monkey that I could do. And same thing with Frankenstein. I've done tons of different Frankensteins, and Frankenstein's monster, I should say.
Sure.
Doing Frankenstein's monster, that there are, I've done at least a dozen different versions. I've even published and taught different versions of it, and other balloon artists were like, "This is the best. This is your perfect one." It's like, nope. He's still back there somewhere. I haven't quite got him yet.
Are you getting closer?
Always getting closer. And that's a great thing too. I don't ever want to feel like I'm there as a stage performer or as a visual artist with my twisting or anything. As a human being, I don't ever want to feel like I'm done. I think anything worth pursuing in life should be worth pursuing as far as you can take it. And yeah, you're never done learning as an artist. I've got young balloon twisters and young performers who ask me, how long is it going to take me to be good? How long is it going to take me to be a professional? The rest of your life. To the last day that I twist balloons, I will still be looking for ways to do it better. And to the very last time I step on stage and interact with an audience and try to connect with that audience, I'll be trying to find better ways to do it and more effective ways to do it. George Burns was rewriting jokes that he'd been telling for 20 years up until the very end. There's a documentary where he's like on the phone with a friend saying, "Hey, so that joke I've been doing for the last 2 decades, what if I switch these 2 words?" And it's like such a simple and to most people would seem an insignificant thing, but he understands that pacing and the order of the words and which words you choose where makes all the difference in the world. And everything. And especially as a human being, as a person, I don't ever want to feel like I'm done. This is one big journey, and I just want to keep learning and growing till the very end, because that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. When it comes to Halloween balloons.
All right, Halloween, we're back to that again.
We went off a little bit, but we're going to keep going back with it because I love it so much. Where are your ideas coming from? Is it your memories of a kid, things you've seen? We all have thoughts of what Halloween is. What is Halloween to you?
Well, Halloween, the holiday itself, the season, is... There are so many different aspects to it. I am a total horror fan. I love silly, sloppy, goofy horror comedy, and I love super intense, scary stuff. And so as a Halloween fan, there's that whole spectrum, but the part of Halloween that's for kids will always be special to me. And looking back on my own childhood and realizing what Halloween meant to me. I think Halloween was the day when I felt most free to be myself. You know, Halloween with Christmas, I love Christmas, don't get me wrong. And
Yeah.
I have friends who are very much into Christmas. I happen to know Santa. He's a great guy. Love the guy. Nicest guy in the world, really. But Christmas time, you know, there's pressure for a kid. There's, you know, what presents do you want? And were you good enough to deserve those presents? And we're going to grandma's house at this time. We're opening presents at this time when this person gets here. And it's very scheduled and it's family. And that's awesome. It's a great holiday and all those things are wonderful. But on Halloween, a kid gets to decide what their costume's going to be. And they decide if it's going to be a scary costume or a not scary costume. And they decide which houses are too scary or which houses they want to go to, and they decide which friends they want to go trick-or-treating with. I feel like Halloween, they get to design their own pumpkin that they carve. Halloween is the time for kids to just be kids. There's no pressure. It's just about pure kid imagination and fun. And I love that part of it. And I also love that being a kid who was very much a scaredy cat until I got much, much older, there's kind of a rite of passage for kids when it comes to scary things. And I've got several performer friends who I've talked to this about, where we know the moment where we crossed over, the moment when you were able to watch that scary movie by yourself. You know, your parents had left you alone for the first time and you watched that scary movie that you weren't supposed to watch. And or the first time that you weren't afraid to go up to that character at an amusement park who you might have been afraid of when you were really little, or the ride that you're no longer afraid to go on at a theme park. When you cross that threshold, that's a big thing. And even listening, like there's documentaries on horror and science fiction movies, and listening to the guys who make these movies talk about going to the theater and the day that they sat in a theater with their friends and made fun of the rubber monster on the screen because it was so cheesy looking, right, instead of being afraid of it. And so, yeah, I think Halloween's a great time because of that too. My own personal Halloween show, the goal of it's always been, it starts out with me telling the kids, this is going to be super scary. And I see sometimes just the really little kids up front who tense up when I say that. Right. I always whisper to them, not really, it's not actually going to be scary. Super scary. You guys are going to be scarified out of your brains. Nothing's going to scary happen at all. I promise. This show's super lame. This is going to be scarifying. So I build up this whole thing that's going to be super scary, and then I fail. The whole show is meant to look like it's going to be scary and then flop at every turn, and nothing scary ever happens during the show. And the greatest thing in the world to me is the end of that show, almost inevitably. I'd say half the shows I do every season, there's one kid about 3 or 4 years old who was super tensed up and nervous at the beginning of the show, marches up to me and very defiantly says, that wasn't scary at all. Because I realize I've just helped that kid. I've just helped them move past that threshold where they're no longer, when they go to see a live show and the performer says it's going to be scary, they're going to be like, yeah, bring it. I'm ready.
Right. Yeah, that's the coolest part about it. Is the authenticity of these kids. And I'm loving what you're talking about, what you're doing with Halloween here, because you know, as you were saying, that really it is scary in all of those aspects, but it's also fun.
Yes.
And you've combined both. I think that is so wonderful.
I think that's a really important thing too, is helping kids understand and learn the difference between scary things. That there are things in life that you legitimately should be afraid of. Mm-hmm. And there are things that are in that possibly fun, scary category. Or even if it's not fun to them necessarily, at least they know it's not a real danger scary. You know, there's safe scary, there's danger scary. And yeah, I like being able to point out the difference to kids, to show them that it's okay to be scared of things, but there's not a danger there. You can actually enjoy the scary thing or walk away from the scary thing and not worry about it. Not everything has to be real scary to you in life.
Tell me a little bit about these virtual shows you're going to do.
They're strange. And it's great that I can now do shows for clients all over the country, all over the world, without ever leaving my office, which I love. Not that I don't love to travel, that's pretty great, but it's also nice to be able to do a show half an hour after I roll out of bed. But the downside is,
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna say, the flip side is I really, really miss the kids. And I miss the interaction with the kids, because even if I pull up a kid on Zoom, if I'm doing like a, just me and a single family, so they're all on screen together, or if I'm doing a bigger show and I can spotlight one person to interact with, it is still not the same energy, and it's not the same feel. And, if I do a trick, or if I ask a question, I ask the audience, are you guys ready for this? All right, if you're ready, wave your hands in the air like this, because I can't have them all screaming at the same time. So instead of, having kids yelling and screaming and enthusiastic right in front of me, I've got little postage stamps with their arms waving in the air. So it's not the same energy. But as a kids performer, you also realize that it's not about you.
Right.
I miss that connection
Absolutely.
so much, and every performer I know misses that connection. Not just kids performers, stand-up comics. It kills them to not have an audience to connect with. And it's not even ego. This is how we connect with other human beings a lot of times, and not having that really, really hurts. But caring about those kids and wanting to still create something fun for them for Halloween makes it worthwhile.
Right.
I'm not getting everything I want out of it, but I know that I'm giving them something fun and unique, and that still makes it okay for me.
What have you learned, or how have you figured out to be interactive with them through Zoom or through any of these mediums?
A lot of it, luckily I'm part of a big network of other performers. I've got a lot of other friends who are doing these types of shows, and so we're able to swap ideas, because if I had to learn this on my own, man, it's such a big learning curve.
Right.
Not even just the performing part, the technology part of it. Like, there's so much. And so luckily I've got so many friends who are doing this, and we're able to share stories and swap ideas and connect. So yeah, that's really been the biggest thing that's helped me figure out how to do this, is just other friends doing trial and error and being willing to share what they know with me. I think right now my favorite thing, as fun as it is to do a show for a big audience, I'm really enjoying doing just one-on-one, where it's a single family. I'm doing a show called Tricks and Treats this year.
Okay.
And so far I'm just keeping it local, because I actually have to ship a package to the parents in advance of the show.
Wow.
But the idea is that it becomes a 4D experience, because while I'm doing things with the kids in the show, the parents are doing secret things behind the kids. So if I make something disappear on my side of the screen, there's a parent standing behind the kid ready to drop it over their shoulder into their lap, so it magically appears on the other side, things like that. So those are fun. I think that's the neatest way that I'm able to interact with people right now, is through those single family one-on-one.
Great idea. I love that. It's a great idea. So you probably get asked this all the time, but I have to ask it, because I'm wondering.
I know everyone asks me that. I do my own hair.
I was going to save that to the end, but now you've answered that question, so I'm thrilled to know the answer to that. I know everyone's got to ask. I'm curious. So what challenges? So when you've got kids coming up and you're saying, well, what do you want me to make? What balloon? What are the most difficult ones that a kid has asked you to make?
Wow. I was working at a restaurant one time, and somebody asked for a working toilet. So my solution was I made a very large toilet bowl out of balloons. I made the backing, the handle, the whole thing. And then I had a large clear balloon with me. And so I made a little rubber ducky, because it was a family restaurant. We had to keep it clean. So I made a little rubber ducky, put that inside the big balloon, and filled it halfway with water. And they put that in the toilet bowl. So that made the water and a little rubber ducky in the toilet bowl. And when you gave it a little swish, it created a little whirlpool that made the ducky swirl around. That is the weirdest request that I have ever been able to successfully make.
Talk about creativity. That's awesome. So you've obviously there's never been one you couldn't do. A request.
I would say in the last 20 years, I have not been stumped. And the only time I say no to a request is if it's a live event and there's a time constraint.
Sure.
You know, if I'm only going to be at this event for 2 hours and there's 25 kids and I'm going to spend about 5 minutes per kid and somebody asks for something really, really outrageous, I may have to say no because just for time constraints, I can't make that and still give everyone else the time that they deserve.
Sure.
But as long as it's something I can actually reasonably pull off in that amount of time, I'll go for it. And again, it goes back to the improv rule that people want to see you succeed. They want to see me actually pull this off. And so sometimes I kind of cheat because it may not be visually and aesthetically what they wanted, but I'll pull off some little clever twist on it that makes it funny enough that they'll let that slide.
When it comes to the Halloween ones, which ones do the kids ask for you to make the most?
I think zombies are always a big request. Kids always love zombies. Pumpkins are very big. I do a lot of like little sculptures that are on hairbands or on wrists. Okay. Especially because like little kids don't want to carry a giant balloon sculpture around with them. So right. they like little things. Older kids, it'll be something huge and obnoxious. I've done giant Frankenstein masks for kids to wear on their heads around a party. I've done giant like dragon / bat gargoyle wings for kids, things like that. I can't think of anything in the realm of monsters and mayhem that I haven't created at some point out of balloons for kids. And the thing is, it's very rarely the same request over and over again. Because once the kids know that I'm not the kind of balloon twister who has the little set menu card for them to pick from, once they know that anything's possible, they start getting really creative. Sometimes to my detriment. Sometimes I shoot myself in the foot by telling them that. They'll go with some really great, crazy stuff. Or my favorite is I just tell them, if you don't know what you want, trust me, and I will make you something spectacular. And if I get a kid to actually trust me and go for the surprise, those are always the best. Because having worked with kids as long as I have, I've got a good sense of who a kid is pretty quick. And so I'll usually ask a couple of basic questions like favorite color, how old are you, silly, pretty, cute, creepy, or weird. And once I get a couple of basic questions out of the way, I can design the perfect balloon sculpture for them. And very rarely am I wrong. Like usually whatever I make for them as a surprise, they're thrilled with.
What's the creepiest one you've done?
The creepiest one, I only have pictures of it, unfortunately, because it got banned from the project. I worked on a balloon haunted house for a few years.
Oh, wow.
In Rochester, New York, there's a company called Aragami, and we did a charity event for about 4 years where we would build an entire haunted house out of balloons. 10,000 square feet, 150,000 balloons. It was insane. And people, we would build it usually in a mall or a department store. So we had a nice air-conditioned, climate-controlled area. And it was usually out for about a week, so people could tour through and donate to the charity while they were there. And one year I was really trying to push how far I could go. And so I made this like decayed zombie character with a hockey mask, and one of his hands had been replaced with a hatchet, and like one of his legs was just the bone from the knee down, and I did like little strips of uninflated red balloon dangling off like tendons, and wow. I was second in command on the project, so I had pretty much carte blanche to do whatever I wanted. And the head designer, my friend Larry, came over. He's like, "Yeah, that was not going in." So, all right.
Oh,
it was a fun experiment.
Well, once again, we talk about it. That's what I love. You know, you it doesn't always work, but you got to try.
In all of life,
Yes.
everything in life is an experiment, and you got to try and find out.
Yes. This has been such a pleasure, Buster, but I can't let you go without, can you give us a balloon? Can you make us a balloon?
Oh, all right.
I mean, we have to. And if you haven't seen this before, it's really amazing how quickly he's able to do these. Those colors look very familiar.
Can't imagine why.
I can't either. I can't either.
All right, I actually haven't done a live show in a couple weeks, so bear with me. This might take a few extra seconds.
You're good.
Two dogs.
Wow. Wow.
Oh, but wait, there's more.
Uh-oh.
Chair back over here.
Wow. This is just fascinating.
Frankenweenie.
I love it. I love it. I love it. After talking to you and then watching that, I can just see in your brain, I can see you figuring this whole thing out. It's fascinating.
You see a little bit of smoke coming out and hear the gears grinding.
Well, Buster, I can't thank you enough. I think it's really wonderful what you're doing and how you're giving back and how you're teaching people and you're just allowing people to have fun. I love that.
Honestly, this is such an honor to be on here with you and the work that you've done as somebody who loves kids and tries to create really positive and memorable experience for kids and make them feel seen and loved and known. Just talk to you has been such a delight. It's really an honor for me. So thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you. And it has just been a pleasure getting to know you and keep up the good work. And I don't want to hear any of this about your energy is down because there is no question. You're going to keep going. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Buster. And thank you for watching Purple Roads. Remember to keep your eyes, ears, and your heart open, and you'll find your Purple Road. We'll see you next week.